All right, so I broke this into two different videos because it was it was going a little bit crazy in the last video, and we needed to just kind of separate the two ideas. So I'm basically back on page 87. I'm looking at number 10. I'm going to basically go from 10 straight through to challenging number 19, which is basically shut Visual Studio down. So what we're going to do is there's uh, just some neat mechanics here that's not necessarily C sharp, but again, it's back to being .NET and Visual Studio. So number 10, actually before number 10, one thing the slides did, or the lab did not actually show is the commenting feature that it did already talk about in the book. So for example, that section there, you might remember, oh, actually, I better go back and reference the exact page number of that so that you guys know what I'm talking about. Yes, I'm talking about page 73. So 73 actually had two types of comments, and I think it's kind of important to note. You get, first of all, if you want to basically write like your life story, look what happened there. As soon as I started this comment line, it's now assuming everything else is comments, and it's waiting basically for me to do this. At that point now, everything is back to being real again. I don't know. I mean, I'll explain comments is basically just love notes to future developers or even yourself. You're kind of explaining what's happening in the program. And you definitely really should be using comments, and I will be suggesting that when I'm looking at your homework. The other thing, the other part is, what if you just want to comment out a particular line right now because it's bothering you, and you or you would normally delete it but you're not sure, or even just a one-liner. Double slashes also will comment out one particular line, and backspacing over that. If you want to comment out a whole section of code, maybe this is not what you want to be testing right now, you can highlight it and go up to here, I think, right? Comment out, and that'll comment it out. If you want to uncomment it out, the next button over will uncomment it out. All right. So that's kind of cool. Screw around with that a little bit. We definitely use commenting quite a bit in when it comes to programming, and you should be aware of it. Now let's look at number 10. All right, so number 10 again, what happens basically if you make a mistake? So over here, number 10, I'm going to go down here to this guy. It says something to the effect of change the name subtotal text box from text subtotal with a lowercase t to text subtotal with an uppercase t. So I'm going to go here. I'm just going to do one right there. I'm going to change this guy to uppercase t total. Now, right away, we get a little squiggly. Right, that's indicating there's a problem. Remember that C# is case sensitive, so there is no object out there so far called text subtotal capital T, and it more or less tells us this in the error message when I hover my mouse over. The tooltip here is basically saying, hey, just so you know, this doesn't exist. Now, interesting enough, which I really thought was kind of cool, Alt Enter gives you a list of ways to possibly solve it. So it sort of explains some of it over here. Also, it's giving us some suggestions. And here's the one that we actually want. Why don't we just change text subtotal to text subtotal with a lowercase t? I got to tell you, friends, as a guy that grew up coding on mainframes and Notepad effectively, that kind of stuff is revolutionary. So that's awesome. It's only been out there for about 20 years now. So, but anyway. So with that said, that's sort of what number 10 was about. And then number 11 says to try and run the application. I tell you what, let's ignore the help that it's going to give us. I'm going to go change after capital T again. And oops, I put my caps lock on for some reason. Change back to capital T. Okay, we're good. So, you don't know me. That looks fine to me. I'm just going to run it. So I'm going to click the run. And of course, it's saying, hey, there are build errors. You want to continue with the last successful build? No, I don't, because I'm going to run with this one, and it's going to basically at this point blow up. Right? Pretty cool. That's kind of what an error message is. Very similar to what I hovered my mouse over, the same kind of message. And I guess although my focus is here anyway, double clicking here will bring me right back to the focus. Where again, I can go Alt Enter. see all the wonderful ways in theory I could try to solve this problem. Actually, how come you're not giving me any of those the same ones? So Alt Enter. Yeah, that's the one I was looking for right there. All right, good deal. So that's one thing, and that's basically number 10 and 11. But what if you do actually want to change the name of something? Does that mean that you're stuck with the name forever? No, and that's what chapter 11, number 12 is all about. This is that refactoring thing I brought up in another video. Number 12 is basically saying find the subtotal variable, which is up here. Find the subtotal variable, right click, and rename it. Now, watch what happens. It's just so cool. You click on that. First of all, it highlights all the spots that subtotal is in. Because obviously, if I just change it there, it's going to break the program again. And then it's going to basically say, hey, do you want to modify, basically, do you want to rename all the 8 references? Pretty cool. And you can preview changes and all sorts of stuff when you choose to do that. I'm not going to, but I'm just telling you that this is very neat. If you do make a mistake later on, you want to clean up your code. Visual Studio does tend to have your back here. All right, but let's talk about now making an error by another error kind of by accident here. All right, so what we're seeing in number 14, it says generate and delete an event handler. Remember, the clicking on the button brought us to this event handler, right? If I click on the exit button, it brings me to that event handler. An event is some kind of event that happens in your application, right? Well, also, if I double click on the form, it'll create an event handler for what happens when someone loads the form. Now, it might happen that you might accidentally double click somewhere and create a handler. And you're going, well, I don't want to use this handler. So number 14 is basically a double click and it creates the handler. Number 15 says to delete the handler. So let's say, well, I don't want to do this. So I'm going to delete. Now, one clue immediately that there's going to be a problem is the fact that something is referencing this code. So if I wipe out the code, like I'm about to, my spider senses should be tinkling because something is referencing that code. In fact, by the way, my error message is already shooting up a warning on me here, but let's just pretend I didn't see that, right? So something is referencing that code. Let's go ahead and say, okay, well, down here, obviously, if I tried to run it, I'd get the same error message. I'm going to basically say, oh, what's going on here? It's saying that something is referencing the form invoice total load event, event that isn't being referenced anymore. What do you want to do about that? And I can basically double click here and it brings me right to the reference. This is the reference. We don't have to understand this code at this point, but understand that this is another piece of this program that's trying to call that event. That event doesn't exist anymore. And so now we have a problem. And I haven't actually tried this, but if I go evolve that, what's it going to do? It's basically for the solutions, it's telling me I could go ahead and create one, or honestly, at this point, as I know I didn't want it, but anyway, I'm going to delete it. And I suspect, where am I in this? Yeah, so at 16, 17, I can delete it. Now, of course, I don't have an error list anymore, and I can now run my program, and it runs like a champ. 1000, and I basically hit enter. Look at it go like a champ. It's working great. And that's kind of the end of that, right? So I click the close button and I'm going to exit. All right. So honestly, at the end of chapter 3, you have actually come a significant way, which is more or less the saying that in the book. You've come a significant way. We finished an actual section in the book, and we've actually gone gone from pretty well zero knowledge of Visual Studio potentially to sort of seeing, basically seeing how this world that we're going to be in actually works. Look at all these objects that were created. Look at all the stuff that the framework, the .NET framework, is actually created for you. So what I would do before going much further, just take a moment. Look over your program. Maybe go and look. I just created an event handler, by the way, for text change. I don't think it's going to do anything particularly wrong with my program because there's nothing there, right? There's nothing there. So, right. But now I've got an event just sitting there. So anyway, play with it a bit. And what we'll be doing now as we start going into section 2 of the book, that's when we really start adding C# essentials now. That's when we're really going to start understanding what's going on in here. We're going to be starting basically by looking at some basic scalar data, very similar to what we did in Python. We're going to also look at the next time on dates and strings. And then we're going to start looking more at some of these control structures that we basically built into here. And we're going to look at exception handling, and then just we're going to go beyond just basically having one simple form to a multi-form application. So it should be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it. All right, until the next one.